3 months from now, billionaire CEO Garrett Blake will lose everything: his empire, his reputation, his freedom. But tonight, he thinks he's untouchable. He's about to make the biggest mistake of his life. In front of 300 people and rolling cameras, he divorces his 7 months pregnant wife, Claire, to be with a Hollywood actress. The crowd gasps. The cameras flash. Claire's humiliation goes viral. But what Garrett doesn't know is that the quiet woman he just destroyed is the hidden daughter of an oil tycoon, and she's about to take back everything he stole. This isn't just a story about betrayal. It's about truth, power, and a woman who refused to disappear. If you love stories where the underdog wins, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling us where you're listening from. You won't want to miss how this ends. Let's begin. 3 months from now, Garrett Blake will stand in an empty courtroom, watching his empire burn. But tonight, under the golden chandeliers of the Blake Foundation Gala, he thinks he's invincible. I stand beside my husband on stage, 7 months pregnant, my hand resting protectively over my belly. The ballroom shimmers with Manhattan's elite investors in tailored tuxedos, socialites dripping in diamonds, politicians wearing practiced smiles. The Cole Foundation Charity Gala has always been the event of the year, but tonight feels different. There's an electric tension in the air I can't quite name. Every table is dressed in white roses and crystal. The orchestra plays softly in the corner. Waiters glide between guests with champagne that costs more than most people's monthly rent. Cameras flash constantly, capturing every moment for tomorrow's society pages. Garrett looks perfect beside me. His Tom Ford tuxedo fits like it was painted on. His dark hair is styled just so, with that one calculated strand falling across his forehead that drives his female fans wild. At 38, he's in his prime, handsome, powerful, charismatic. The kind of man who walks into a room and changes its gravity. I used to be proud to stand next to him. Tonight, I just feel tired. The master of ceremonies, a silver-haired news anchor named Preston Ward, finishes his glowing introduction about our charitable work in renewable energy and humanitarian aid. The crowd applauds enthusiastically. I smile my practiced smile, the one I've perfected over 8 years of being Garrett Blake's wife. And now, Preston says, a few words from the man who makes it all possible, Garrett Blake. More applause. Garrett steps forward, comfortable in the spotlight like a performer who's rehearsed this moment his entire life. He talks about our foundation's accomplishments, about the solar projects in developing countries, about the scholarships for underprivileged students. His voice carries that particular blend of warmth and authority that makes people want to believe him. I've heard this speech before. Different venues, same themes. I let my mind wander, thinking about the nursery we're supposed to finish painting this weekend. Soft yellow walls, white furniture, a mobile with stars and moons. Then Garrett's tone shifts. Before we continue, he says, and something in his voice makes my stomach tighten. I have something personal to share. This wasn't in the script. We'd rehearsed his remarks this morning over breakfast. This wasn't part of it. I look at him, confused. He won't meet my eyes. Marriage is complicated, he continues, his voice taking on that confessional quality he uses when he wants to seem vulnerable. People change. Priorities evolve. And tonight, I want to be honest with all of you. Completely honest. The room goes quiet. 300 conversations die mid-sentence. Every eye turns toward the stage, toward us. My heart starts to pound. Something is very wrong. Claire and I, Garrett says, finally glancing at me with an expression I can't read, are ending our marriage. The words hang in the air like smoke. For a moment, my brain refuses to process them. I must have misheard. The acoustics in this ballroom are terrible. He said something else. He must have, but the gasps from the audience tell me I heard correctly. What? The word escapes my lips as a whisper, but the microphone catches it, broadcasts it to 300 shocked faces. Garrett continues as if I haven't spoken. We've grown apart. I can't pretend anymore. I've found someone who truly understands my vision, who shares my passion for what we're building. My legs feel weak. The room tilts slightly. I grip the podium beside me, my knuckles going white. From the side of the stage, movement catches my eye. A woman in a crimson dress steps into the spotlight. Tall, brunette, breathtaking. Sienna Vale, the actress. The one Garrett said was just our brand ambassador. The one he assured me was purely professional. She takes his hand. The ballroom erupts. Gasps become shouts. Camera flashes explode like lightning in a storm. I hear someone near the front table say, "Oh my God." Another voice, "Is this really happening?" My vision blurs at the edges. My heart pounds so violently I can feel it in my throat, in my temples, in my fingertips. A sharp pain shoots through my abdomen, not the baby kicking. Something else. Something wrong. "Garrett," I manage, my voice cracking. "Please, not here. Not like this." He finally looks at me directly, and what I see in his eyes destroys me. There's nothing there. No remorse, no hesitation, no trace of the man who once said he'd love me forever. Just cold, calculating triumph. "You'll be fine, Claire Diego," he says, his tone almost dismissive. "You always land on your feet." Another contraction, sharper this time. I press my hand to my stomach, feeling the baby move frantically inside me, as if she can sense my panic. Sienna leans into the microphone, her voice smooth and practiced. "He deserves to be happy. We both do. Love doesn't follow a schedule." The cameras are everywhere now. I can hear the clicking, the whirring, the mechanical sound of my humiliation being documented in real time. Someone in the back is already on their phone, probably live streaming this to social media. The pain intensifies. I feel wetness between my legs and terror floods through me. "Something's wrong," I gasp, but my voice is lost in the chaos. The ballroom starts to spin. The chandeliers above become blurred streaks of light. Voices blend into a meaningless roar. I see faces staring at me, some shocked, some pitying, some gleeful at the drama unfolding. My legs give out. I hear someone scream for a doctor. Garrett's voice. Annoyed, "Get her off the stage." Strong hands catch me before I hit the floor. The last thing I see before everything goes black is Sienna adjusting her dress for the cameras. That perfect smile never wavering. I wake up to the antiseptic smell of a hospital room and the steady beep of monitors. Fluorescent lights buzz overhead. My mouth is dry. My head pounds. And for a blissful moment, I don't remember what happened. Then it all crashes back. A doctor appears beside my bed. She's young, maybe 35, with kind eyes and a gentle manner that makes me want to cry. "Mrs. Blake," she says softly. "I'm Dr. Sarah Chen. You're at Mount Sinai. You experienced what we call false labor, Braxton Hicks contractions triggered by extreme stress. The good news is your baby is fine. Strong heartbeat, normal movement. But Claire, you need to understand something." She pulls up a chair, her expression serious. "You're at significant risk for complications if you experience this level of stress again. Your blood pressure spiked dangerously high. At 30 weeks pregnant, that's extremely concerning. You need rest, peace, and absolutely no major stressors. Do you understand?" I nod, but I want to laugh. Rest, peace. My husband just divorced me on live television. My life just became a viral video. Does he know, I whisper, that I'm here? Chen's expression shifts, becomes carefully neutral. "Mr. Blake was informed. He said he'd send someone to collect your belongings from the penthouse. Not 'I'll be right there,' to not 'Is she okay?' Just instructions about belongings. 8 years of marriage. Reduced to logistics." My phone sits on the bedside table. Screen dark. I'm afraid to turn it on. But I need to know. With trembling hands, I press the power button. The notifications explode. 17 missed calls. 68 text messages. My social media apps show hundreds of notifications. The numbers climbing even as I watch. I open Twitter first. Hashtag PregnantWifeGate is trending worldwide. Number 1. Above a presidential scandal. Above a celebrity death. Above everything. The video is everywhere. Someone recorded the entire thing in high definition. I watch myself standing there, confused and pregnant. As my husband announces our divorce, I watch my face crumble. I watch myself collapse. The comments are a wasteland of human cruelty. "She looks cold anyway. No wonder he left. Gold digger got what she deserved. Sienna Vale is way hotter. Upgrade. Pregnancy hormones probably made her impossible to live with. Some defend me, But they're outnumbered 10-1. The narrative is already set. I'm the obstacle Garrett Blake had to overcome to find true love. A knock at the door makes me jump. A courier enters, young guy in a blue uniform, looking uncomfortable. Claire Blake, he asks. Hartford, I correct automatically. My voice hoarse. My maiden name is Hartford. He hands me a manila envelope. Sign here, please. My hands shake as I open it. Divorce papers, filed 4 hours ago while I was unconscious. He wants the penthouse, full ownership of Blake Energy, all marital assets. I get a generous monthly stipend of $5,000 and a non-disclosure agreement preventing me from discussing our marriage publicly. There's a handwritten note on Blake Energy letterhead. His precise script, signed quickly, and this doesn't have to get ugly. You know I hate ugly. Gee. I crumple the paper in my fist, then immediately regret it. Evidence. I need to keep evidence of everything. The door opens again. This time it's Jessa Quinn, my best friend since college, carrying a pint of Rocky Road ice cream and a bottle of wine. The wine's for me, she announces, dropping into the chair beside my bed. Her curly red hair is wild, like she ran here. Her eyes are red-rimmed. You get ice cream and my undying loyalty. Also, I called your mom. She's not answering. Of course she's not. Margaret Hartford hasn't approved of a single decision I've made since I was 18. I'm so stupid, I whisper. The signs were everywhere, Jessa. Late nights at the office, those business trips to Los Angeles every month, that new cologne he started wearing, the way he'd smile at his phone and angle it away when I walked past. Jessa opens the ice cream, hands me a spoon. You're not stupid. You're trusting. There's a difference. He's the asshole, not you. I can't afford to fight him, I sit around, taking a mechanical bite. The ice cream tastes like cardboard. He froze our joint accounts. I checked. I have $347 in my personal checking account. That's it. 8 years of marriage, and I have less than $400. Then we get creative. Jess's jaw sets in that stubborn way I know from a dozen college arguments. My cousin Brianna is a paralegal. She says guys like Garrett always have skeletons. Rich men don't stay rich by being honest. They stay rich by being smart about their dishonesty. On the television mounted to the wall, the news plays on mute. Then I see him, Garrett, already on the morning talk shows. He must have gone straight from the gala to the studio. Same tuxedo, slightly loosened bow tie, perfectly calibrated stubble. I grab the remote, turn up the volume. Garrett, everyone's talking about your announcement last night, the host says, a blonde woman with sympathetic eyes and shark instincts. That was quite a moment. Garrett nods, his expression perfectly balanced between regret and resolve. Sharon, I don't want to speak badly about Claire. She's a good person. But the truth is, she changed during the pregnancy. She became distant, suspicious, constantly questioning my work schedule. I tried everything to connect with her, but sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes you have to be honest about when something isn't working. Even 7 months into her pregnancy, especially then, Garrett says, and I can hear the calculated emotion in his voice. I didn't want to bring a child into a broken home, into a marriage built on resentment and obligation. Yes, the timing looks bad, but staying would have been worse. For everyone. The host nods like this makes perfect sense. And Sienna Vale, she prompts. Garrett's face softens in a way that used to make my heart flutter. Sienna understands the pressures of public life. She understands ambition, drive, the need to build something meaningful. We connected on a level I haven't experienced before. I'm not going to apologize for finding happiness. I throw the ice cream spoon at the television. It bounces off harmlessly, leaving a small smear of chocolate. That son of a bitch, Jessa breathes. He's making it sound like you drove him away. He's rewriting history, I say. By tomorrow, everyone will believe I was the problem. My phone buzzes again. A text from an unknown number. Thinking of you. Stay strong, me. Old friends from the foundation board. Not, how can we help? Not, what do you need? Just thoughts and prayers. The currency of people who want to seem caring without actually doing anything. Another text. This one from my mother. I saw the news. We should talk. I stare at those 4 words. We should talk. Not, are you okay? Not, I'm coming to see you. just the vague suggestion of a conversation. Probably one where she'll tell me she warned me about Garrett, that I should have listened, that I made my bed and now I have to lie in it. I don't respond. Dr. Chen returns with discharge papers. You're free to go, but I need you to promise me you'll rest. Do you have somewhere safe to stay? My place, Jessa says immediately. Studio apartment in Queens. It's small, but it's yours. What about the penthouse? Chen asks. That was never mine, I say quietly. It was always his. As we're leaving, a nurse stops us in the hallway. She's older, maybe 60, with gray hair and compassionate eyes. Mrs. Blake, she says quietly, I just want you to know my daughter went through something similar. Not as public, but similar. She survived. She's thriving now. You will too. It's the kindest thing anyone has said to me in 12 hours. I almost break down right there in the hospital corridor. Instead, I nod, thank her, and let Jessa guide me out to the parking garage where her ancient Honda waits. As we pull into traffic, I look back at Mount Sinai, at the building where I learned my marriage was over, where I almost lost my baby, where my entire life pivoted on its axis. The city glitters around us, indifferent and eternal. Somewhere in this sprawl of steel and glass, Garrett is celebrating his liberation. Sienna is fielding congratulatory calls from her agent, and I'm heading to a studio apartment in Queens with nothing but the clothes on my back and a baby girl who'll be born into this chaos. But I'm not broken, so not yet, not ever. If I can help it, Jessa's studio apartment in Astoria is exactly 350 square feet of organized chaos. Band posters cover the walls. She went through a serious punk phase in college that never quite ended. Books are stacked everywhere on shelves, on the floor, on the tiny kitchen counter next to a dying succulent. The futon that serves as both couch and bed is covered in a quilt her grandmother made. I know it's not the penthouse, Jessa says, dumping her keys in a bowl by the door. It's perfect, I say, and I mean it. The penthouse always felt like a museum, beautiful, expensive, and cold. This feels like a home. You take the futon, I've got a sleeping bag, and I'm basically a contortionist from all those yoga classes I took for 3 weeks before giving up. Despite everything, I smile. That first night, I lie awake listening to the sounds of the city. Sirens, car horns, someone's television bleeding through thin walls. In the penthouse, everything was soundproofed. Silent, sometimes too silent. My phone won't stop buzzing. I've turned off most notifications, but texts still come through. Friends or people I thought were friends sending careful, distant messages. Thinking of you. Stay strong. Let me know if you need anything. But when I respond asking if they know a good attorney or have a spare room, the replies stop coming. Garrett's reach is long. These people attend Blake Energy events. They serve on boards with him. They can't afford to choose me. I finally turn my phone completely off and try to sleep. The next morning, I wake to Jessa making coffee in her tiny kitchen. The smell makes my stomach turn. Pregnancy has made me sensitive to everything. Sorry, she says, seeing my face. I'll take it outside. No, it's okay. I need to get used to things being different. She hands me herbal tea instead. We sit on the futon, and I finally check my phone. 83 new messages. 4 voicemails, hundreds of social media notifications. Garrett's PR campaign has been devastatingly effective. By day 3, every major outlet has run the same story. Brilliant CEO outgrows troubled marriage. Garrett Blake's journey to authentic love. When success means letting go, Sienna has become America's sweetheart overnight. Her Instagram is a carefully curated gallery of inspirational quotes and behind-the-scenes photos from her movie sets. She posted one photo yesterday, her and Garrett at breakfast, laughing, with the caption, "Sometimes love finds you when you stop looking. Blessed, authentic, living no regrets." 47,000 likes, thousands of comments praising her courage, her beauty, her authenticity. I want to throw my phone against the wall. Instead, I open my bank account, $347, just like yesterday. Except now I owe Jessa for groceries, and I need to see my obstetrician for a follow-up. And my health insurance was through Blake Energy. Was past tense, panic starts to rise in my chest. I force myself to breathe. The baby kicks, as if reminding me to stay calm. We'll figure it out, Jessa says, reading my face. Brianna's putting together a list of attorneys who work on contingency, and my mom said you can stay here as long as you need. Your mom lives in Florida. Yeah, but she pays the rent on this place. Long story. Point is, you're not homeless. My phone rings. I don't recognize the number. But something makes me answer. Claire Hartford, a woman's voice, soft and cultured. Yes, my name is Margaret Hartford. I'm your mother. I nearly dropped the phone. I know who you are. Mom, of course, forgive me. I'm not sure how to begin this conversation. She pauses. I saw the news. What Garrett did. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. Sweetheart. She hasn't called me that since I was 12, before Dad died, before she remarried and we moved to Connecticut, and everything changed. Thank you, I say carefully. I know we haven't been close. Margaret continues. That's my fault. After your father died, I didn't handle things well, but you're my daughter, and you're in trouble. Let me help. Something in me wants to believe her, wants to fall back into the fantasy that mothers always love their daughters, always protect them, always show up when it matters. I can't travel, I tell her. Doctor's orders, bed rest. Then I'll come to you. Where are you staying? I give her Jess's address. She says she'll be there tomorrow. After I hang up, Jessa looks skeptical. When's the last time you talked to your mom? 6 months, at my baby shower. She left early. And before that, my wedding, where she told me marrying Garrett was social climbing, and I was fooling myself if I thought he'd stay interested. So she shows up now, after being MIA your entire adult life. Jessa shakes her head. I don't trust it. Maybe she's changed. People don't change. Claire, they just get better at hiding who they've always been. Margaret arrives the next morning in a black town car, looking like she stepped out of a Saks Fifth Avenue catalog. Designer coat, perfect hair, the scent of Chanel No. 5 preceding her like a warning. Jessa excuses herself. I'll give you privacy, but I'm leaving my phone recording in the kitchen, just in case. And then it's just me and my mother in 350 square feet of tension. This is Aussie, Margaret says, looking around with barely concealed distaste. It's temporary. Of course it is. She sits on the futon, sets down an expensive leather briefcase. I've already consulted with an attorney about your situation. Roger Whitman, one of the best divorce lawyers in Manhattan. Hope flickers in my chest. You hired someone for me. Not yet, but I've reviewed your options. She opens the briefcase, produces a folder. These papers will protect your rights. Sign them, and we can fight Garrett properly. I take the folder. Legal documents, dense paragraphs of text in that incomprehensible language lawyers use. What do they say as standard filings? Contesting the divorce terms, claiming marital assets, establishing your rights as a spouse. Roger says with your signature, he can begin proceedings immediately. My hands shake as I flip through the pages. This seems fast. Speed is essential. Every day that passes, Garrett consolidates his position. He's already moving assets, restructuring accounts. If we don't act now, there'll be nothing left to fight for. The baby kicks hard, as if protesting something. I should probably read these more carefully. Claire, Margaret's voice sharpens. I'm trying to help you, but if you don't trust me, if you think I'm somehow conspiring with the man who humiliated you on national television, then I'll leave right now and you can handle this alone. The words hit like a slap. I'm exhausted, scared, 7 months pregnant and homeless and broke. And here's my mother, offering help, and I'm questioning it because of old wounds and Jessa's paranoia. I'm sorry, I say. You're right. Where do I sign? She points to highlighted sections. 7 pages. I sign them all. My handwriting shaky but legible. Margaret gathers the papers, tucks them back into her briefcase. I'll file these today with Roger's office. Everything's going to be okay. Sweetheart, I promise, boss, your bulk. She stands, smooths her coat. I have a board meeting this afternoon, but I'll call you tonight. Do you need money for food? Expenses? I'm okay for now. She nods. kisses my forehead, the first physical affection I can remember in years, and leaves. I sit on the futon, staring at the closed door, feeling something I haven't felt in days. Hope. Maybe Jessa was wrong. Maybe people do change. Maybe my mother finally realized what matters. Shame. I sleep for 12 hours straight. Deep, dreamless sleep. When I wake, afternoon sun streams through Jessa's single window. My phone shows 4 missed calls from the same number. I call back. Mrs. Blake, a woman's voice, crisp and urgent. This is Claire Hartford. My name is Ruth Porter. I'm a divorce attorney. We need to talk immediately. Are you somewhere private? I'm at a friend's apartment. What's this about? The papers you signed yesterday, they weren't legal filings for divorce proceedings. They were waivers. You just signed away all claims to marital assets, spousal support, and property division. The room tilts. What? Your mother was paid by Garrett Blake, $50,000. The transaction cleared 3 days ago, right before she contacted you. I have the bank records. I'm sending them to your email now. My laptop is on the coffee table. I open it with trembling hands, pull up my email. Ruth's message is there, with attachments, bank statements. Continental Bank. Transfer from Blake Energy Corporation to Margaret Hartford. $50,000. Memo line. Consultation fee for asset negotiation assistance. There's more. A contract, signed by Margaret, agreeing to facilitate asset waiver documentation in exchange for payment. My mother sold me out. For $50,000, she made sure I'd get nothing. The room spins. My chest tightens. Not again. Not another attack. But my body doesn't care about what I want. The contractions start, sharp and real this time. I try to call Jessa, but my hands won't work properly. I manage to dial 911. Say, back in Mount Sinai. Different room. Same fluorescent lights. Dr. Chen looks worried this time. Claire, we've stopped the contractions again, but I need you to understand something. One more episode like this, and I won't be able to stop early labor. Your baby will be born at 30 weeks. That means NIC, potential complications, months of medical intervention. I understand. Do you, because stress is literally threatening your child's life. Whatever you're dealing with, you need to find a way to manage it. How do I explain that my husband destroyed me publicly? My mother betrayed me privately, and I'm being systematically erased from my own life. I'll try, is all I can say. Ruth Porter shows up that evening, after visiting hours, somehow talking her way past the nurses. She's in her mid-50s, with steel gray hair and eyes that have seen every betrayal humanity can manufacture. I'm taking your case, she says without preamble. Pro bono. Oh, waggity. She sits in the chair beside my bed. 15 years ago, I was you, pregnant, humiliated, broke. My ex-husband was a hedge fund manager. He thought destroying me would be easy. He was wrong. What happened? I became a divorce attorney. I've spent 15 years making sure men like him don't win. She opens her briefcase. Your situation is complicated, but not hopeless. The waivers your mother tricked you into signing potentially voidable based on duress and fraudulent inducement. But we need to move fast. I can't pay you, Bitty. You will, after we destroy him. Ruth's smile is sharp. I don't lose, Claire, ever. But I need you to promise me something. What? No more trust. Not your mother, not old friends, not anyone connected to Garrett. From now on, you verify everything. You question everything. You protect yourself first. Your baby second. And everyone else never. Can you do that? I think about the woman I was 3 days ago. Trusting, naive, broken. I think about the woman I need to become. Yes, I say. I can do that. For the first time since the gala, I feel something other than despair. I feel rage. And rage, I'm learning, is so much more useful than sadness. Ruth Porter doesn't waste time. Within 48 hours of taking my case, she's filed emergency motions, demanded financial disclosures from Blake Energy, and subpoenaed 8 years of bank records. Garrett's legal team, 3 attorneys from Manhattan's most expensive firm, responds with their own paperwork, a motion for emergency custody upon birth. Their argument is elegant in its cruelty. I'm mentally unstable. I've been hospitalized twice in 1 week. My own mother has publicly expressed concern about my erratic behavior. I'm not fit to care for an infant. They attach evidence photos of me crying outside the hospital, published in tabloids, medical records from my admissions somehow obtained despite HIPAA laws. A sworn statement from Margaret Hartford describing my concerning emotional volatility during pregnancy. My mother's signature at the bottom, notarized and official. Ruth and I meet in her office, a cluttered space in Midtown that smells like old books and coffee that's been sitting too long. Papers cover every surface. Law books line the walls from floor to ceiling. A photo on her desk shows a younger Ruth with a baby, the child she fought for 15 years ago, now a teenager. They're building a narrative, Ruth explains, spreading documents across her desk. Postpartum psychosis, emotional instability, unfit mother. It's textbook for men who want to weaponize the legal system against their wives. How do we fight it? We prove he's a fraud. She pulls up a spreadsheet on her laptop. I hired a forensic accountant. She's been going through Blake Energy's financials. Claire, your husband is hiding something. Something big. She turns the screen toward me. Columns of numbers that might as well be hieroglyphics. I don't understand finance, I admit. You don't have to. That's what I'm here for. Ruth taps one cell, highlighted in yellow. Look at this. 8 years ago, right before you got married, Blake Energy received a massive cash injection, $23.7 million. The source is listed as Private Investment Consortium, but there's no consortium name, no investor list, no paper trail. I try to remember. That's when the company really took off. Garrett said he'd secured backing from an anonymous benefactor, some billionaire who wanted to invest in renewable energy but stay private. Anonymous doesn't exist in corporate law, Ruth says. Someone put in that money, multiple someones, and your husband buried the trail. Something tickles at the edge of my memory. A conversation, years ago, before the wedding. My father, I say slowly. Ruth looks up, eyes sharp. What about your father? He died when I was 12. Heart attack. Sudden. He worked in oil. I barely remember him. I was so young when it happened. But I remember him talking about business partnerships, about building something that would last. My mother remarried 6 months after he died. We moved to Connecticut. She never talked about him again. It was like he'd never existed. What was his name? Tobias Hartford. Ruth's fingers fly across her keyboard. Her eyes widen. She turns the laptop toward me. Claire, Tobias Hartford founded Hartford Petroleum in 1984. Started with one rig in West Texas. Built it into a major regional player over 14 years. In 1998, he sold the company to Continental Energy for $317 million. The number is so large it doesn't feel real. That's impossible, I whisper. We lived in a normal house, split level in New Jersey. My mom worked at a bank. We weren't rich. After the sale, your father did something interesting. Ruth clicks through more documents. He established a trust. For you, it was set up to activate upon demonstration of financial need or majority ownership requirement. Did you ever apply for it? I didn't know it existed. Neither did your husband. Officially, Ruth's expression hardens. But look at this. 2 months before you married Garrett Blake, someone requested the trust documents from the executor. The inquiry came from Blake Energy's legal department, specifically from Garrett's personal attorney. My blood runs cold. He knew. He knew about the trust. He knew about your father's fortune. And I'd bet every dollar I have that the $23 million that launched his company came from connections through Hartford Petroleum. Garrett didn't marry you because he loved you. Claire, he married you for access to your father's legacy. I touch my belly, feeling the baby shift beneath my hand. So everything was a lie. Most likely, yes. Ruth's voice softens slightly. I'm sorry, I know that's not what you want to hear, but we can use this. If we can prove he married you fraudulently, used your family connections without consent, we can not only contest the divorce, we can go after him for fraud. What do we need? Proof. Documents showing the connection between Hartford money and Blake Energy, financial records, contracts, Anything that proves he used your father's business relationships. I think about the storage unit key in my jewelry box, the one I've carried for years without knowing why. I might know where to find that, I say, on my own. The storage facility in Long Island City looks like it hasn't been updated since the 1980s. Faded paint, crack on concrete, a manager who looks like he hasn't smiled since the Cold War ended. Jessa drives me there in her Honda, Ruth following in her own car. It's a cold November morning, the kind where your breath makes clouds and the city feels hostile. Unit 47B, I tell the manager, showing him the key. It was my father's. He checks his ancient computer system. Paid through 2050, prepaid in full. Weird, but legal. Go ahead. The unit is at the end of a long corridor that smells like rust and forgotten things. When I unlock it, the door groans open on hinges that haven't moved in years. Inside boxes. Dozens of them. Stacked floor to ceiling in neat rows. This is going to take a while, Jessa says. We dig in. Tax documents, business contracts, photographs of oil rigs and men in hard hats. My father young and smiling in the Texas sun. Letters from business partners. Geological surveys. Reports on well productivity. Ruth photographs everything, making notes on her phone. Then I find it, in a box marked, personal do not discard, a sealed envelope. My name written in my father's handwriting for Claire, when she needs it. My hands shake as I open it. My darling Claire, the letter begins. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and I hope you've lived a wonderful life. I hope you've been happy. I hope your mother has taken care of you the way I would have wanted. A bitter laugh escapes me. Ruth looks up, concerned, but I wave her off. I built something for you. The letter continues. Something your mother didn't want. She thought money would corrupt you, that wealth would ruin who you are. Maybe she was right, but I wanted you to have choices. Freedom, security, trust number 774992 with Hartford and Associates in Manhattan. When you need it, it will be there. I love you more than all the oil in Texas, sweetheart. Never forget that. Your dad. Beneath the letter are legal documents, trust papers, account numbers, asset listings, and something else, something that makes Ruth actually gasp. Claire, she says, her voice shaking slightly. Hartford Petroleum didn't just sell to Continental Energy. It merged with specific terms. Your father retained 20% equity stake in perpetuity, transferring to descendants. Do you know what that means? No. It means you own stock. A lot of stock. In Continental Energy. And do you know who Blake Energy's largest partner is? Continental Energy. Exactly. Garrett built his entire empire on partnerships with a company you partially own. He used your inheritance without telling you. This isn't just fraud. Claire, though, this is systematic. Calculated theft of your birthright. Jessa lets out a low whistle. Holy shit. We have him, Ruth says, and there's triumph in her voice. We have everything we need to destroy him. So, that night, back at Jessa's apartment, I can't sleep. I keep reading my father's letter, trying to remember more about him, but my memories are so faint, filtered through the lens of childhood. I remember his laugh, deep and warm. I remember him teaching me to ride a bike in our driveway, running beside me, catching me when I fell. I remember him reading to me before bed, doing funny voices for all the characters. I remember my mother's face at his funeral, not sad, relieved. At 2 a.m, I open my laptop and start researching. Tobias Hartford's death, the circumstances, the obituary. What I find makes my blood run cold. My father was admitted to hospitals 3 times in the 6 months before his death, each time for severe gastrointestinal distress, rapid heart rate, confusion. Each time, doctors couldn't find a clear cause. Each time, he recovered and went home. The 4th time, he didn't recover. Cause of death, acute myocardial infarction, heart attack. He was 48 years old, marathon runner, no history of heart disease. I dig deeper, find medical journals about poisoning cases, arsenic, small doses over time, symptoms gastrointestinal problems, cardiac issues, confusion. I call Ruth. I think my mother killed my father. Silence on the line. Then we can't prove that. Not without an autopsy. And your father was cremated. Immediately after death, my mother insisted, Claire, I understand what you're thinking, but we need to focus on what we can prove right now. The trust fraud, the corporate malfeasance. We can revisit your father's death later, but I can't let it go. If my mother killed my father for his money, if she's been stealing from me for 26 years, then her betrayal isn't just recent. It's my entire life. Everything I thought I knew is a lie. The next morning, Ruth files our counter motion. It's illegal atomic bomb fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, misappropriation of family assets, systematic corporate malfeasance. We demand full audit of Blake Energy, emergency injunction preventing asset transfers, and restoration of Hartford trust rights. We schedule a press conference for Monday, 3 days away. Ruth advises me on what to say. Stay calm, stick to facts, let the documents speak for themselves. Don't let them see how angry you are. But I am angry, angrier than I've ever been in my life. Garrett calls that afternoon. I almost don't answer, but Ruth says I should, that we might get him to say something incriminating. I put him on speaker. Ruth records everything. What the hell are you doing? Garrett snarls. No charm now, just pure rage. Getting back what you stole. You can't prove anything. That forensic accountant is fishing. Dalton's making things up to save his own ass. We have the documents. Garrett, all of them. Hartford Petroleum, Continental Energy, the trust papers. We have my father's business records showing you used his partnerships to build your company. Silence. Blah. Then your father's company was sold decades ago. There's no connection. The retained equity stake says otherwise. 20%, transferring to descendants. That's me, Garrett. I own part of Continental Energy, which means I own part of every deal you've made with them. More silence. I can almost hear him thinking, calculating. You're going to regret this, he finally says, his voice dropping to something dangerous. I will make sure you never see that baby. I have resources you can't imagine. Lawyers, judges, politicians. I will bury you so deep no one will remember your name. Try it, I say. See what happens. I hang up. Ruth is grinning. That was perfect. Threats on a recorded line. His lawyers are going to have a stroke. But that night, alone on Jess's futon while she's at her bartending shift, I'm terrified. Garrett doesn't lose. He never loses. He's spent his entire life making sure he wins, no matter what it takes. What if I just made everything worse? What if he does take my baby? What if I'm not strong enough to fight him? The doubts circle like vultures. But then the baby kicks. Strong, insistent, alive. And I remember I'm not fighting for myself anymore. I'm fighting for her. That changes everything. The lawsuit hits Garrett exactly where Ruth predicted his reputation. Within 24 hours of filing, Bloomberg runs the story. Blake Energy CEO accused of building empire on wife's inheritance. Wall Street Journal follows with corporate fraud allegations, rock renewable energy giant. The narrative shifts. Suddenly, I'm not the bitter ex-wife. I'm the victim of systematic financial abuse. Social media pivots hard. Hashtag Justice for Claire trends. Someone creates a fundraiser for my legal expenses that raises $40,000 in 3 days. Women's advocacy groups reach out, offering support for 72 glorious hours. I think we're winning. Then Garrett's counterattack begins. It starts Sunday night. I'm at a prenatal checkup, my weekly monitoring to make sure the baby's still healthy. Everything looks good. Strong heartbeat, normal movement. Dr. Chen is cautiously optimistic. Your blood pressure is coming down, she says. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it. Less stress equals healthier pregnancy. I'm walking out of the hospital when my phone explodes with notifications. A tabloid website, the sleazy kind that lives off celebrity scandals and manufactured outrage, has published what they claim are my psychiatric evaluations, complete with hospital letterhead, doctor signatures, clinical language that looks completely legitimate. The headline, Claire Blake's secret mental health crisis, a doctor's warned of postpartum psychosis risk. The article includes alleged diagnosis of severe depression and anxiety, Claims I've been on psychiatric medication since college. A fabricated doctor's note warning. I'm at high risk for postpartum psychosis. Expert commentary from a psychiatrist who's never met me, discussing how pregnancy can exacerbate mental illness. Within an hour, it's everywhere. Conservative news sites run with unstable woman attacks, successful husband. Liberal outlets debate the stigma of maternal mental health. Everyone has an opinion. No one questions whether the documents are real. Ruth calls immediately. Don't respond. Don't defend yourself. Do not engage. But it's all fake. I've never seen a psychiatrist. I've never been diagnosed with anything. I know, but proving documents are fake takes time. By the time we get a court order forcing them to reveal their source, by the time we prove forgery, the damage will be done. This is exactly what Garrett wants you looking reactive and unhinged. So I just let people think I'm crazy. You let people think whatever they want. We focus on the legal case. That's all that matters. But it's not all that matters, because by Monday morning, Garrett's lawyers have filed an emergency motion immediate custody upon birth, supervised visitation only, mandatory psychiatric evaluation before any unsupervised contact with the child. The hearing is scheduled for Wednesday, 2 days away. So Tuesday morning, Jessa is arrested. 2 NYPD officers show up at dawn. They have a warrant violation of order of protection, aggravated harassment, stalking. What? Jessa shouts as they cuff her. I haven't done anything. They show evidence, text messages from Jessa's phone number to Sienna Vale, dozens of them over the past week, starting friendly, becoming increasingly aggressive. You should be ashamed of yourself. Home wrecker, husband stealer. You'll get what's coming to you. I know where you live. Photos of Sienna's apartment building, taken from across the street. The metadata shows they were taken with Jessa's phone. I didn't send those, Jessa yells as they lead her out. Someone cloned my phone. Claire, don't worry, this is bullshit. But they take her anyway. I'm left alone in the apartment, 8 months pregnant, watching my best friend get arrested for something I know she didn't do. My phone rings. Ruth? Don't come to the press conference tomorrow, she says without preamble. It's a trap. What are you talking about? Dalton Pierce, he was never on our side. He's been feeding Garrett information the whole time. Those financial documents he gave us real, but he gave them to you with Garrett's permission. The room spins. Why? To make you think you were winning, to get you to act rashly, to make accusations you couldn't fully prove yet. And it worked. Jessa's arrest is part of it. They're building a patterned, unhinged woman, enabling friend, baseless accusations. I sink onto the futon. But the Hartford Trust documents are real. The Continental Energy connection is real. Yes, but here's what I just found out. The forensic accountant Garrett's team hired has preliminary findings that he plans to release tomorrow morning, right before our press conference. He's going to claim the Hartford connection is coincidental, that the private investment came from legitimate sources, and that you're manufacturing fraud to avoid a simple divorce. Can he do that? He can claim anything. It'll take us weeks to disprove it. Meanwhile, you'll look like a liar. I want to scream. I want to throw something. Instead, I just cry. What do? We cancel the press conference. We go back to the legal case, slow and careful. The custody hearing is Wednesday. We focus on that. We show the judge that you're stable, employed, capable. We challenge the fake psychiatric records. We show them the truth, piece by piece. But the momentum. Momentum doesn't matter if we lose custody of your daughter. Everything else is secondary to that. She's right. I know she's right, but it feels like surrendering. That afternoon, while I'm trying to figure out how to bail Jessa out of holding, my mother gives an interview to Good Morning America. I watch it live, unable to look away. Margaret sits in a cream-colored armchair in what looks like a hotel suite, wearing pearls and a lavender blouse. She looks elegant, concerned, maternal. Margaret, you've been largely silent about your daughter's situation. The host begins. Why speak out now? Because I'm worried, Margaret says, her voice trembling just enough. Claire has always been sensitive, fragile. The pregnancy has made it worse. I've tried to help her, but she's become paranoid. seeing conspiracies where there are none. She's accused you of taking money from Garrett Blake. I accepted a consultation fee for helping navigate a difficult situation. Garrett wanted to make sure Claire was financially cared for. He's not the villain she's making him out to be. He's a good man trying to do right by everyone, including the baby. The host nods sympathetically. Some are saying you betrayed your daughter. Margaret's eyes shimmer with tears. I love my daughter. Everything I've done has been to protect her from herself. If necessary, she's making terrible decisions, surrounding herself with people who encourage her paranoia. That Quinn woman who was just arrested, I tried to warn Claire about her. Do you think Claire is fit to raise this child? Margaret pauses, as if the question pains her. I think she needs help, professional help, and I think that baby deserves a stable environment. I turn off the television, my own mother, on national television, testifying against me. For a long time, I just sit there feeling nothing. The numbness is almost welcome after days of emotional whiplash. Then I do something stupid. I go to Blake Energy headquarters. Security stops me in the lobby. Ma'am, you're not authorized to be here. I need to see Garrett Blake. Tell him his wife is here. Ex-wife, the guard corrects. And Mr. Blake is in meetings all day. Then I'll wait. I sit in the lobby for 3 hours. People walk past, recognizing me, whispering. Some look sympathetic. Most look uncomfortable. A few smirk. Finally, Garrett appears, flanked by 2 security guards and looking annoyed. What do you want, Claire? I want to know why. You've already won. You have the company, the money, the public on your side. Why go this far? Why destroy me completely? His expression is pure ice. Because you challenged me. No one challenges me and walks away. I'm carrying your child. That's unfortunate timing, he says, as if discussing a scheduling conflict. But it doesn't change anything. You thought you could use your father's ancient business connections to embarrass me. You thought wrong. I just wanted what's mine. Nothing is yours. Not anymore. He leans closer, voice dropping. Here's what's going to happen. Wednesday, the judge will grant me emergency custody. You'll be deemed unfit. I'll raise our daughter with Sienna. She'll call Sienna Mom. You'll be a footnote. And in 5 years, no one will even remember your name. Something inside me breaks, but it doesn't shatter into weakness. It hardens into clarity. You're going to regret this conversation, I say quietly. He laughs. I really won't. Security escorts me out. On the sidewalk, November wind cuts through my coat. I stand there, feeling my baby move inside me, and I realize something fundamental has shifted. I've been playing his game, reacting, defending, trying to prove I'm not what he says I am. It's time to play a different game entirely. I call Victor Castellano, the tabloid journalist who first approached me in Central Park. I need your help. I tell him, not with the fake recordings, with the real story. I'm listening. Hartford Petroleum, my father's death, the trust, Garrett's fraud. But deeper, we're not just exposing corporate malfeasance, we're exposing a conspiracy that's been going on for 26 years. Victor is quiet for a moment. Then that's a story worth risking my career for. When do we start? Tonight. And Victor, we're going to need to talk to people who knew my father, people who remember what really happened when he died. I know a private investigator, former FBI. If there's something to find, she'll find it. Good, because Garrett thinks he's untouchable. Let's prove him wrong. The custody hearing is in a courthouse in Lower Manhattan, a building that smells like floor wax and old wood and human desperation. Ruth meets me outside, her expression grim. They're going to hit us hard, she warns. Psychiatric records, your mother's testimony, Jess's arrest. Garrett's playing every card. Can we win it? But we can survive. That's the goal today. Survive. Keep temporary custody off the table. Buy time for our investigation. Inside, the courtroom is smaller than I expected. Oak paneling, fluorescent lights, a judge's bench that looks like it's presided over 1,000 broken families. Garrett's already there with his 3 lawyers. He's wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost $5,000. He looks calm, confident, like he's attending a board meeting, not fighting for custody of his unborn child. Sienna isn't here. Smart on her part. The judge enters a woman in her 60s named Judith Callahan, with silver hair and an expression that suggests she's heard every lie humanity can invent. Garrett's lead attorney stands. His name is Lawrence Winters, senior partner at Morrison and Croft, a firm that charges $800 an hour to make problems disappear. Your Honor, we're deeply concerned for the welfare of the unborn child. Mrs. Blake has exhibited increasingly erratic behavior over the past 2 weeks, including filing spurious lawsuits, making baseless fraud accusations against my client, and associating with individuals who have been arrested for harassment and stalking. Ruth shoots up. Your Honor, those accusations are, let him finish, sus. Porter. Winters continues. The leaked medical records confirm Mrs. Blake is at high risk for postpartum psychosis and has a history of mental health issues dating back to her college years. Her own mother has expressed concerns about her fitness as a parent. We believe immediate custody arrangements are necessary to protect this child. He slides a folder across to the judge. We've prepared a comprehensive report detailing Mrs. Blake's instability, including photographic evidence of her emotional outbursts, medical documentation, and sworn statements from family members. Judge Callahan reviews the documents. Her face remains neutral, but I see her pause on certain pages, her eyebrows rising slightly. Miss Porter, your response, Ruth stands, and I see why she's legendary in divorce law. Her entire demeanor shifts from sympathetic advocate to legal predator. Your Honor, what we're witnessing is a calculated campaign of destruction by a wealthy man who wants to avoid the consequences of his own fraud. These medical records are forgeries. We're pursuing criminal charges against whoever fabricated them. Mrs. Blake has never been diagnosed with any psychiatric condition. She's a healthy woman experiencing a healthy pregnancy who's been subjected to extraordinary stress by her husband's very public betrayal and systematic asset theft. She produces her own folder. This is the real story. Garrett Blake married my client specifically to access her father's business connections. He used those connections to build Blake Energy without disclosing their origin. He's committed corporate fraud on a massive scale. And now, when my client discovered the truth, he's weaponizing the legal system to silence her. Those are serious allegations. Ms. Porter, they're provable allegations. Your Honor, we have documents, we have a paper trail, we have testimony from business partners who remember Tobias Hartford and can confirm the connections. But more immediately, we have evidence that the psychiatric records submitted by Mr. Blake's team are fabricated. The psychiatrist whose name appears on them doesn't exist. The medical license number belongs to a pediatrician in Oregon who's never met my client. Winters jumps up. Your Honor, Ms. Porter is making inflammatory accusations without foundation. I'm making accusations I can prove. Ruth interrupts. Give me 2 weeks. 2 weeks to get the medical board's confirmation that these records are fake. 2 weeks for our forensic accountant to complete her report on the Hartford Continental Energy connection. That's all I'm asking. Don't grant custody based on lies. Judge Callahan looks at me. Mrs. Blake, do you have anything to say? I stand, my hands trembling. I've practiced this moment with Ruth, but my mind goes blank. Then I think about my daughter, about her growing inside me right now, trusting me to protect her. Your Honor, I'm not crazy. I'm not unstable. I'm a woman who discovered her husband built his entire life on stealing from my family. I'm fighting for what's mine, not because I'm vindictive, but because it's the truth. And I'm fighting to keep my daughter because I already love her more than anything in this world. That's all. That's the whole story. The courtroom is silent. Judge Callahan closes the folders. I'm ordering a psychological evaluation for Mrs. Blake to be completed by an independent psychiatrist within 10 days. I'm also ordering both parties to submit financial disclosures, including all business partnerships and asset sources, within 14 days. Until those evaluations are complete, custody arrangements remain pending. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel strikes. It's not a win, but it's not a loss. We bought time. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarm. Ruth shields me, but questions fly anyway. Claire, do you have mental health issues? Did you really attack Sienna Vale? Is it true your own mother thinks you're unfit? Ruth guides me to a waiting car. Inside, I finally break down. I can't keep doing this. I can't fight my husband, my mother, the media, everyone. Yes, you can, Ruth says firmly, because the alternative is losing everything, and I don't think you're ready to do that. She's right. I'm not ready to lose. I'm barely ready to fight, but I'm definitely not ready to lose. That evening, Victor Castellano and his private investigator, a woman named Alice Murphy, who looks like someone's grandmother but talks like a homicide detective, meet me at a diner in Brooklyn. I found Robert Finch, Alice says, sliding a file across the table. He worked with your father at Hartford Petroleum, retired now, lives in Connecticut. He's willing to talk about my father, about how your father died. Alice's expression is serious. Mr. Finch has believed for 26 years that Tobias Hartford was murdered. He's kept records, documents. He's been waiting for someone to ask the right questions. My coffee goes cold in my hands. Who does he think killed him? Alice exchanges a look with Victor. Your mother, Claire. He thinks Margaret Hartford poisoned her husband for his money. We drive to Connecticut the next day. Jessa comes with us. She made bail. Charge is still pending, but at least she's free. Victor drives, Alice rides shotgun, and Jessa and I sit in the back, watching suburban Connecticut roll past. Robert Finch lives in a modest ranch house in Stamford. He's in his 70s now, with weathered hands and eyes that have seen too much. I've been waiting for this conversation for 26 years, he says, leading us into a living room dominated by bookshelves and oil industry memorabilia. Your father was my best friend, Claire. When he died, I knew something was wrong. We sit. Robert pulls out a box, the kind that holds a lifetime of secrets. Tobias was the healthiest man I knew, Robert begins. Marathon runner, vegetarian, didn't drink, didn't smoke. Then suddenly he's in the hospital with severe gastrointestinal problems. Vomiting, diarrhea, irregular heartbeat. Doctors couldn't figure it out. When was this? Alice asks. Notebook ready. 6 months before he died. First hospitalization was March 1998. He recovered, went home. 3 weeks later, same symptoms. Hospitalized again. Doctors ran every test. Nothing conclusive. He'd recover, go home, and a month later, it would happen again. 3 hospitalizations, I say, remembering the records I found online. 3 times he nearly died. Each time your mother was with him, devoted wife. Everyone said, never left his side. Brought him food from home because hospital food was terrible. Everyone thought she was so loving. Alice looks up sharply. She brought him food. Every day, home-cooked meals, soups, smoothies. The nurses used to comment on how lucky Tobias was. The implications hang in the air. The 4th time, Robert continues, was July 12th, 1998. Massive heart attack. He was dead before the ambulance arrived. Your mother had the body cremated within 48 hours. No autopsy. No questions. The death certificate said acute myocardial infarction. Heart attack. Clean, simple, tragic. But you didn't believe it, Victor says. I knew Tobias. He'd been getting sicker over months, and suddenly his heart just gives out. No, I requested an investigation, but your mother was the grieving widow. She remarried 6 months later, moved away. Case closed. Robert opens a folder in the box. Hospital records from 1998. Lab results showing elevated levels of something the doctors noted as unexplained. I kept copies of everything, Robert says. I didn't know what to do with them. I wasn't a detective. I was just an old friend who knew something was wrong. Alice photographs every document. This is enough to request an exhumation, except he was cremated. I finish. No body to examine. But there might be hospital samples, Alice says. Blood work, tissue samples from biopsies. They're stored for years. If we can get a court order, we'd need evidence of foul play to get a court order. Ruth interrupts. She's been silent, listening. Which we don't have. Just suspicions. What about financial records? Victor asks. Follow the money. Robert nods. After Tobias died, Your mother received a substantial settlement from his life insurance, $5 million. She also inherited his shares in Hartford Petroleum, which she immediately sold to Continental Energy for $40 million. She walked away with $45 million in 6 months. Where did the money go? I asked. Excellent question. Robert says, because Margaret Hartford lived modestly after that, worked at a bank, raised you in a middle-class neighborhood. What happened to $45 million? Alice is already on her laptop. Give me her social security number. I can trace financial movements going back decades. We spend the next 2 hours going through Robert's documents, birth certificates, marriage licenses, business contracts, my father's entire life, preserved in a cardboard box by a friend who never forgot. As we're leaving, Robert puts a hand on my arm. Your father loved you so much, he says quietly. He talked about you constantly, his brilliant daughter. He set up that trust because he wanted you to have choices, freedom. Don't let them steal what he built for you. I nod, unable to speak. In the car driving back to the city, Alice breaks the silence. I can prove where the money went. It'll take a week, maybe 2, but I'll find it. What if she just spent it? Jessa asks. $45 million over 26 years. Alice shakes her head. Even living lavishly, that's nearly $2 million per year. Your mother worked as a bank teller making $40,000 annually. Where did the rest go? Maybe she invested it, Victor suggests. Or maybe, Alice says slowly, she gave it to someone else. Someone who needed seed capital to start a business. Someone who married her daughter to maintain access to Hartford family connections. The realization hits me like cold water. Garrett, I whisper. My mother gave the money to Garrett. Alice Murphy works fast. Within 5 days, she's traced financial records that should have stayed buried forever. We meet in Ruth's office, the space now covered in printouts, timelines, and evidence that makes my stomach turn. Your mother is very good at hiding money, Alice begins, spreading documents across Ruth's desk. She used shell corporations, offshore accounts, trusts nested within trusts. But here's what I found. She points to a highlighted section. In 1990, 1 year after your father died, Margaret Hartford established a corporation called Hartfield Holdings. Innocuous name, listed purpose investment management. She seeded it with $30 million. From my father's money. I say, correct. Over the next 5 years, Hartfield made strategic investments in renewable energy, startups, small amounts, diversified, smart investing. By 2004, that $30 million had grown to approximately $60 million. Victor lets out a low whistle. Then in 2005, Alice continues, something interesting happens. Hartfield invests $20 million in a brand new company called Blake Energy Corporation. Founder Garrett Blake, age 27, recent MBA graduate with no prior business experience. The room goes quiet. My mother funded Garrett's company, I say slowly, before I even met him. It gets better, Alice says. In 2007, you graduated from NYU. That summer, you attended a charity function for renewable energy startups. Corporate sponsors included Blake Energy. At that event, you met Garrett Blake for the first time. I remember that night, the way he'd singled me out in the crowd, charming and attentive. How lucky I'd felt that someone so successful would notice me. It wasn't luck. It was orchestrated. Your mother arranged for you to meet him, Ruth says, following the thread. She funded his company, then introduced him to her daughter who happened to be the heir to Hartford Petroleum's legacy. But why back then? Why would she do that? Alice pulls out another document. Because in 2006, Margaret Hartford was diagnosed with lung cancer. She underwent treatment, went into remission, but the prognosis wasn't great. She needed to move assets out of her name, shelter them from potential estate taxes and medical costs. So she used Garrett as a front, Victor says. Exactly. She gave him the money. He built the company, married you to legitimize the Hartford connection. When you married Garrett, you signed a prenup. Do you remember the terms? I try to recall. 8 years ago, the day before our wedding, Garrett's lawyer presenting papers, assuring me it was standard. All business assets acquired before marriage remain separate property. I recite from memory. I thought it was to protect what he'd already built. It was to protect what your mother built, Ruth corrects. Blake Energy was technically his before marriage. Your mother's investment was carefully hidden. When you married him, you had no legal claim to the company, but your family name gave it legitimacy. Hartford Blake Energy in all but name. And my mother gets what out of this, I ask. Alice slides across a bank statement. Monthly payments from Blake Energy to Hartfield Holdings, classified as consulting fees. $100,000 per month. Every month. For the past 8 years, Margaret has received $9.6 million from the company you thought was your husband's. I feel sick. So Garrett never loved me, I say quietly. He married me because my mother paid him to. Not exactly, Alice corrects. He married you because it was good business. Whether he loved you, she shrugs. Who knows, but the marriage served a purpose. Access to Hartford connections, legitimacy in the energy sector, a respectable family image. You were useful, until I got pregnant and became inconvenient. I finish, until you became a liability instead of an asset. Ruth agrees. Pregnant women ask questions. They want their children protected. They insist on things like life insurance, wills, financial transparency. You were getting too close to discovering the truth. Jessa, who's been silent this whole time, finally speaks. So the divorce wasn't about Sienna. It was about getting rid of Claire before she found out about the money. The public humiliation was strategy, Victor adds. Destroy her credibility first, so if she did discover the fraud, no one would believe her. I stand, needing to move. My daughter kicks inside me, strong and insistent. What do we do with this? I ask. We use it, Ruth says. This isn't just divorce fraud anymore. This is racketeering, tax evasion, conspiracy. This is federal crime territory. We take this to the U.S. Attorney's office. Will they care? I ask. Rich people hide money all the time. They'll care about this, Alice says, because Hartfield Holdings received federal tax breaks for renewable energy investments. Blake Energy received government contracts based on minority ownership claims. Hartford, being the Hartford family name, gave them preferences. If we can prove it was all a shell game, that's fraud against the federal government. Ruth's smile is sharp, and the feds don't like being defrauded. But before we can move forward, everything falls apart again. Friday afternoon, I'm at the psychiatrist's office for my court-ordered evaluation. Dr. Patricia Morrison is in her 50s, kind-faced, with an office that smells like lavender and feels safe. We've been meeting for an hour, talking about my childhood, my marriage, the pregnancy. She's asked about my mental state, my support system, my plans for parenting. I've been honest, maybe too honest, but she seems sympathetic. I'm going to recommend to the court that you're perfectly fit for custody, she says at the end of the session. You're experiencing normal stress reactions to extraordinary circumstances. There's no evidence of psychosis, no indication of risk to yourself or the baby. I'll have my report ready by Monday. Relief floods through me. Thank you. I leave her office feeling lighter than I have in weeks. Maybe we can win this. Maybe the truth will prevail. Then my phone rings. Victor. Claire, we have a problem. A big one. What happened? Our investigation just went public. Someone leaked it to Garrett's lawyers. My heart drops. How? I don't know, but they're spinning it as you manufacturing evidence. They're calling Alice's investigation a conspiracy theory. They're threatening to sue us for defamation. Can they do that? They can claim anything. More importantly, they've filed an emergency motion for tonight. Emergency hearing in 2 hours. They're saying you're escalating, becoming more unstable, manufacturing wild accusations to avoid custody loss. But we have proof. We have financial records that could be interpreted multiple ways. We don't have a smoking gun. Not yet. And Garrett's lawyers are good at creating reasonable doubt. 2 hours later, I'm back in court. Judge Callahan looks annoyed at being called in on a Friday evening. Lawrence Winters stands, his expression grave. Your Honor, we've learned that Mrs. Blake, despite court proceedings, has hired private investigators to harass witnesses, manufacture evidence, and create elaborate conspiracy theories about my client. She's now claiming, without evidence, that her own mother murdered her father 26 years ago and has been involved in a decades-long criminal conspiracy. He makes it sound insane. The way he says it, I sound insane. Ruth jumps up. Your Honor, we have documentation. Documentation of what? Ms. Porter legitimate business transactions. A mother who invested in her son-in-law's company, normal family financial arrangements. Financial arrangements that were hidden from my client, used to defraud her of her inheritance. Alleged fraud reform, Winters interrupts. My client has fully disclosed his business relationships. Blake Energy maintains proper corporate structure. The Hartfield Holdings investment is a matter of public record for anyone who bothers to look. There's no conspiracy. Your Honor, there's only a troubled woman making increasingly desperate accusations. Judge Callahan looks at me. Mrs. Blake, did you hire a private investigator? Yes, but did you accuse your mother of murder? I'm investigating my father's suspicious death. Did you or did you not hire someone to investigate your mother for murder? I hesitate. In that moment of hesitation, I lose. Your Honor, Winters says smoothly, we're not asking for permanent custody tonight, but we are asking for supervised visitation to be mandatory upon birth. Mrs. Blake is spiraling. She's paranoid, making wild accusations, seeing conspiracies everywhere. For the child's safety, we need oversight. Judge Callahan is quiet for a long moment. I'm ordering supervised visitation for the first 3 months after birth. She finally says, Mrs. Blake, you'll have access to your child, but a social worker will be present. After 3 months, we'll reevaluate based on Dr. Morrison's ongoing assessments and your cooperation with mental health treatment. Mental health treatment, I say, but Dr. Morrison said I was fine. Dr. Morrison said you're under stress. I'm ordering counseling. Weekly sessions, non-negotiable. The gavel strikes. I've lost, not completely, but enough. Supervised visitation. Mandatory counseling. The court officially questioning my stability. Outside, Ruth tries to console me. It's temporary. 3 months. We can handle 3 months. But 3 months feels like forever when you're about to give birth to your first child and the court is questioning whether you're fit to hold her. That night, back at Jess's apartment, I hit bottom. Not the kind of bottom where you want to give up. The kind where you realize you've been fighting wrong. I've been playing defense, reacting to Garrett's moves, trying to disprove his accusations, scrambling to keep up with his attacks. It's time to play offense. I call Victor. I want to do an interview. On camera, full story. Claire, Ruth will kill me if I let you do that. I'm not asking Ruth, I'm asking you. You're an investigative journalist. Interview me. Let me tell my side, unedited, complete. Garrett's lawyers will use anything you say against you. Good. Let the world hear what he did. All of it. The fraud. My mother's betrayal. Everything. I'm done hiding. Victor is quiet for a long moment. Okay, but we do it right. Fact-checked. Documented. No emotional outbursts. Just facts. Can you handle that? Yes. Monday. My studio. Bring Ruth. Bring every document you have. We're going to tell your story the right way. After I hang up, Jessa sits beside me on the futon. You sure about this? She asks. No, but I'm done being the victim in my own story. Garrett wrote the narrative. He cast me as the bitter, unstable ex-wife. I'm going to rewrite it. What if it backfires? Then it backfires, but at least I'll have fought on my own terms. That weekend, I write out everything, every detail of my marriage. My father's death, my mother's betrayal, Garrett's fraud. I organize it chronologically, attach documents, create a timeline. Ruth calls Saturday morning. I heard what you're planning. It's a terrible idea. It's the only idea I have left. Claire, anything you say publicly can be used in court. You could lose custody completely. I'm losing it anyway, slowly. This way, at least people will know the truth. She's silent for a long time. If you're determined to do this, then we do it carefully. No accusations you can't prove. No speculation. Just facts and documents. That's all I want to share. The truth. The truth is dangerous. Claire, it ruins lives. It's already ruined mine. Might as well ruin his too. Monday morning, I sit in Victor's small studio in Brooklyn. Camera lights are harsh but professional. Victor has brought in a fact checker, a lawyer, and a second journalist to verify everything I say. Ruth sits off camera, monitoring, ready to stop me if I go too far. Victor begins. Claire, thank you for agreeing to speak with me. Let's start at the beginning. When did you first meet Garrett Blake? And I tell the story, all of it. The orchestrated meeting, the whirlwind romance, the prenup I signed without understanding, the marriage that seemed perfect until it wasn't, the way he changed after I got pregnant, the late nights, the distance, the litzo. I show documents, the Hartford Petroleum Trust papers, the Hartfield Holdings corporate filings, the payments from Blake Energy to my mother's shell company. I talk about my father's suspicious death, the hospitalizations, the cremation, Robert Finch's testimony. I explain how Garrett used my family name to build his company, how he married me for access to business connections, how he discarded me the moment I became inconvenient. The interview lasts 3 hours. When it's done, I'm exhausted, but strangely calm. This will go live Friday, Victor says. My editor wants to verify some details. Legal wants to review for defamation risk. But Claire, this is powerful. This is important. I nod. Whatever happens, at least I told the truth. Ruth drives me back to Queens. You know there's no going back from this, right? Once this airs, you're all in. Garrett will come at you with everything he has. Good, we need to say. Let him come. I'm ready. But I'm not ready. Not really. Because Wednesday morning, before the interview airs, my water breaks. The baby is coming early. The contractions start at 3 a.m. I wake to a gush of fluid and panic, the sheets soaked, my body tensing in pain. Jessa, I manage to call out. She's awake instantly, years of light sleeping from working late shifts kicking in. Is it time? I think so. Call Dr. Chen and Ruth, and another contraction cuts me off. 34 weeks. The baby is coming 6 weeks early. Too early. Jessa calls 911 while helping me dress. The ambulance arrives within 8 minutes. The EMTs are efficient, professional, asking questions I can barely answer through the pain. Mount Sinai again, the same hospital where this nightmare started. Dr. Chen meets us in labor and delivery, her expression calm but concerned. Claire, your baby's heart rate is strong, but at 34 weeks, we're looking at NICU time, premature lungs, potential complications. We'll do everything we can. Is she going to be okay? Babies born at 34 weeks usually do very well, but it's not ideal. The next hours are a blur of pain and monitors and medical jargon I don't understand. Jessa holds my hand. Ruth arrives, somehow talks her way past hospital security by claiming she's my sister. Where's Garrett? A nurse asks, assuming the father should be present. Not here, Ruth says firmly. He's not welcome. At 9:47 a.m., my daughter is born. 4 pounds, 11 ounces, tiny, perfect, screaming with healthy lungs. They let me hold her for 30 seconds before whisking her away to the NICU. Those 30 seconds are the most beautiful and terrifying of my life. She's strong, Dr. Chen says. She just needs time to grow. I move to recovery. The epidural wears off slowly, leaving me exhausted and sore but grateful. My daughter is alive. Small, but alive. Ruth stays with me while Jessa goes to get coffee and call her family. We sit in silence for a while, watching the morning sun stream through the hospital window. You did it, Ruth says finally. You brought her into the world. Now I have to keep her safe. We will. Together. My phone, which Jessa thought to grab from the apartment, buzzes with messages. Most are from numbers I don't recognize. But one is from Garrett. I heard the baby came early. I hope she's healthy. My lawyers will be in touch about custody arrangements. No congratulations. No emotion. Just logistics. I delete the message. Another message. This one from Margaret. I hope the baby is okay. Call me when you can. I delete that too. Victor texts, heard you're in the hospital. Interview is still scheduled to air Friday unless you want to delay. I respond, air it, don't wait. That afternoon, a social worker arrives. Her name is Patricia Lewis, mid-40s, tired eyes. She's here to observe my interactions with the baby, per court order. I know this feels invasive, she says gently, but I'm not here to judge you. I'm here to make sure the baby is safe. She's in the NICU. I can't even hold her without permission. I understand. We'll visit together when the doctors say it's okay. We go to the NICU that evening. My daughter is in an incubator, tiny body covered in wires and monitors. She's so small, so vulnerable. Patricia watches as I stroke my daughter's hand through the incubator opening. The baby's fingers curl around mine, impossibly delicate. Have you chosen a name? Patricia asks. Toby, I say, short for Tobias, after my father. That's lovely. We stand there for a long time, watching this tiny person breathe, fight, exist. She's going to be okay, I whisper. She has to be. The interview airs Friday morning on Victor's news platform. Within an hour, it's viral. The headline, CEO built empire on wife's stolen inheritance, a true crime story. I watch it from my hospital room. Jessa beside me, Ruth on speakerphone with her legal team monitoring social media. Victor edited it beautifully. Every accusation is backed by documents shown on screen. My father's trust papers, Hartfield holdings, corporate filings, the payments to Margaret, Robert Finch's testimony, Dr. Morrison's evaluation stating I'm mentally sound. I watch myself on screen, looking tired but credible, explaining calmly how Garrett built Blake Energy using my family's connections and my mother's money, how he married me to maintain legitimacy, how he discarded me when I became inconvenient. The comment section explodes. This woman is a hero for speaking out. Garrett Blake needs to be in prison. I knew something was wrong with that gala announcement. Her own mother betrayed her. That's evil. Not everyone believes me. Plenty of comments call me a liar, a scorned woman making up stories. But the tide has turned. The narrative has shifted. By noon, CNN picks up the story. By evening, every major news outlet is running with it. Blake Energy and crisis, fraud allegations, rock company. Mother-daughter conspiracy. Did Margaret Hartford fund corporate deception? Pregnant wife's revenge, truth or tabloid? The stock market reacts. Blake Energy's shares dropped 23% in one day. Trading is suspended pending investigation. The Securities and Exchange Commission announces they're reviewing the company's financial disclosures. Garrett's PR machine goes into overdrive. He releases a statement calling my accusations desperate and false, claiming he'll sue for defamation. But the documents speak for themselves. Saturday morning, the FBI shows up at Blake Energy headquarters with a search warrant. They spend 12 hours removing boxes of files, computer equipment, financial records. Ruth calls me, excitement in her voice. The U.S. Attorney's Office just contacted me. They want to talk to you. They're building a case against Garrett. Against Garrett, your mother, potentially others. This is big. Claire, by federal fraud investigation big. I should feel victorious. Instead, I just feel tired. My daughter is in the NICU, gaining weight slowly but steadily. The doctors say she'll be there for at least 3 weeks, maybe longer. I spend my days moving between my hospital room and the NICU, holding Toby when the nurses allow it, talking to her through the incubator when they don't. Patricia, the social worker, visits daily. She observes me feeding Toby, changing her tiny diapers, singing to her softly. She takes notes but never looks disapproving. You're a good mother, she tells me on day 5. I'm going to recommend to the court that supervised visitation isn't necessary. Really, you're bonded with your daughter. You're attentive, gentle, appropriate. The stress you've been under is extraordinary, but you're handling motherhood beautifully. I cry from relief. Monday morning, 1 week after Toby's birth, Margaret calls. I almost don't answer, but something makes me pick up. Claire, we need to talk, she says. No pleasantries, no congratulations on the baby. I don't think we do. The FBI contacted me. I need to explain. Explain what? How you murdered my father. How you stole his money. How you sold me to Garrett like property. Silence. Then I didn't murder your father. Robert Finch says otherwise. Robert Finch is a bitter old man who never understood business. Your father died of a heart attack. Natural causes. The rest is conspiracy theory. The hospital records show poisoning symptoms. Show me one doctor who diagnosed poisoning. One test that came back positive. You can't, because it never happened. Then why did you cremate him immediately? Because that's what he wanted. In his will. No funeral. No burial. Cremation. I honored his wishes. Convenient. Margaret's voice turns cold. You're making a mistake. Going after Garrett is one thing. But coming after me, your own mother, that's unforgivable. You betrayed me first. I protected you. Everything I did was to give you a stable future. Garrett was successful. Ambitious. From a good family. I thought he'd take care of you. You paid him to marry me. I invested in his company. That's different. And yes, I introduced you. Is that so terrible mothers want their daughters to marry well? You hid it from me. You made me sign away my rights without knowing what I was signing. You testified against me in court because you were acting crazy, accusing Garrett of fraud, hiring investigators, making wild claims about murder. You needed someone to snap you back to reality. The reality is you and Garrett conspired to steal my inheritance. That's not theory. That's documented fact. Margaret laughs, bitter. You think you're so smart now, but you have no idea what you're dealing with. Garrett has lawyers, connections, resources. You're living in a studio apartment, your baby's in the hospital, and you're about to be buried in legal fees you can't afford. I have the truth. The truth doesn't pay bills, Claire, and it doesn't win custody hearings. It doesn't protect babies. She hangs up. I sit there, staring at my phone, feeling something harden inside me. She's right about one thing: truth isn't enough. I need proof, undeniable, documented proof that destroys them both. And I'm going to find it. Alice Murphy calls Tuesday morning with news that changes everything. I found it, she says without preamble. The smoking gun. I'm in the NICU, holding Toby skin to skin, her tiny body against my chest. Patricia sits nearby, observing, but she's started bringing a book, treating these visits more like quiet time than supervision. What did you find? Hospital blood samples from your father's final hospitalization. They're stored in a biobank at Columbia Medical Center. I convinced a sympathetic lab tech to run a retrospective toxicology screen. My heart pounds. And arsenic, consistent with chronic poisoning for several months, enough to cause organ stress, cardiac complications, eventual heart failure. Your father was murdered, Claire, and I can prove it. The room spins. I knew it. Somewhere deep down, I knew it. But having proof is different. What do we do? I've already contacted the district attorney's office. They're reviewing the evidence. If they decide to pursue it, they'll exhume. Oh, she pauses. Right, cremated. But they can still investigate, interview witnesses, build a circumstantial case. Will they charge my mother? Maybe. The evidence is 26 years old. Statute of limitations on murder doesn't expire, but proving it will be hard. She'll claim she didn't know, that someone else had access to him, that the arsenic came from somewhere else. But we have the hospital records showing repeated poisoning symptoms. We have medical records that, in retrospect, are consistent with poisoning. That's not the same as proof she did it. But Claire, even if they can't charge her criminally, this destroys her credibility in civil court. Every statement she's made against you, every testimony about your stability, it all becomes suspect when she's potentially a murderer. Ruth calls minutes later. Did Alice tell you? Yes. The U.S. attorney wants to meet with you tomorrow. They're building a racketeering case against Garrett using the Hartfield Holdings money trail. Your mother's potential murder of your father gives them leverage. They can threaten her with charges unless she cooperates. You mean testify against Garrett? Exactly, and she's vulnerable now. If she thinks she might face murder charges, she'll flip on Garrett to save herself. And if she won't flip, then we go to trial with what we have. It's still strong, but her testimony would seal it. The next day, I meet with Assistant USMI Attorney Rebecca Marsh in her office at the Southern District of New York. She's younger than I expected, maybe 40, with sharp eyes and a manner that suggests she doesn't lose often. Mrs. Blake, she begins, then corrects herself. Ms. Hartford, I've reviewed the evidence your team has compiled. It's compelling. Hartfield Holdings, the Shell corporations, the payments to your mother, the Hartford Petroleum connection. If we can prove this was a coordinated scheme to defraud you of your inheritance while securing federal tax benefits and government contracts, we have a solid case. What do you need from me? Testimony, documents, complete cooperation. This will be public, invasive, and difficult. Your personal life will be dissected. Are you prepared for that? I think about Toby, sleeping peacefully in the NICU, her tiny chest rising and falling. Yes, I say. I'm prepared. Good. We're also investigating your mother. The arsenic evidence is concerning, but old. We'd prefer she cooperate rather than face charges. I'm going to offer her immunity in exchange for full testimony about the Hartfield Holdings scheme. Immunity after everything she's done. It's strategy, not justice. I want Garrett Blake. He's the bigger fish. Your mother was a co-conspirator, but he's the one who built an empire on fraud. She's a means to an end. And if she refuses the deal, then we pursue charges against both of them. But that's riskier. Divided targets mean divided resources. I'd rather focus everything on Blake. That afternoon, Rebecca Marsh meets with Margaret's attorney. I'm not present, but Ruth gives me the update later. Your mother took the deal, Ruth says. Full immunity in exchange for testimony. She'll admit to funding Blake Energy, hiding the money, conspiring to keep you in the dark. Everything. She's betraying Garrett to save herself. Exactly. I should feel vindicated. Instead, I feel hollow. When does she testify? Grand jury convenes Monday. If they indict, we're looking at trial in 6 to 8 months. 6 to 8 months, half a year of legal proceedings, media coverage, public scrutiny, but also 6 to 8 months of building a life with my daughter. She said, Toby comes home on day 17. 4 pounds, 15 ounces, still tiny, but healthy. The doctors give me detailed instructions, feeding schedule, weight checks, warning signs to watch for. Jessa helps me set up a corner of her studio apartment as a nursery. We hang a mobile with stars and moons, arrange tiny onesies in a second-hand dresser, set up a bassinet near the futon. It's cramped and makeshift, but it's ours. The first night home, I barely sleep. Every sound Toby makes sends me to check on her. Is she breathing? Is she too hot? Too cold? Hungry? She's fine, Jessa says at 3 a.m., finding me hovering over the bassinet for the 4th time. You're a good mom. Trust yourself. What if I'm not enough? You're literally all she needs. Food, warmth, love. You've got all 3. Toby and I settle into a rhythm, feeding every 3 hours. Diaper changes, tiny sounds that I learn to interpret. The different cries for hunger, discomfort, needing to be held. I take photos constantly, documenting everything. Her first smile probably gas, but I count it anyway. The way her hand curls around my finger, her eyes still blue, staring at me like I'm her entire world. Because I am. For now, I'm everything she knows. Patricia visits weekly. Her reports to the court are glowing. Ms. Hartford is an attentive, appropriate parent. Supervised visitation is unnecessary. The court hearing to remove supervision is scheduled for mid-December, 3 weeks away. Meanwhile, the legal machine grinds forward. The grand jury indicts Garrett Blake on 14 counts: fraud, tax evasion, racketeering, conspiracy. Bail is set at $5 million. He posts it within hours. His mugshot makes the evening news. For the first time, he looks diminished, scared. Sienna Vale releases a statement through her publicist. I had no knowledge of any financial impropriety. I was deceived like everyone else. I'm cooperating fully with investigators. Translation. She's flipping on him too. Blake Energy's board votes unanimously to remove Garrett as CEO pending trial. The company goes into receivership. Assets are frozen. Everything Garrett built is falling apart. My mother gives her testimony to the grand jury. I don't attend, but Ruth is there as my representative. She was cold, Ruth reports. Clinical. She laid out the whole scheme without emotion. Funding Blake Energy. Arranging your meeting with Garrett. The prenup designed to exclude you from business assets. She even admitted the Hartfield Holdings payments were essentially money laundering. Did she admit to killing my father? No. She maintains he died of natural causes. The DA's office can't prove otherwise without more evidence. So they're not pursuing our charges. But it's on record now. The suspicion, the hospital records showing arsenic exposure, it's enough to destroy her credibility permanently. What happens to her? Nothing legally. She took the immunity deal. But socially, professionally, she's finished. No one will trust her. No one will do business with her. She'll live out her days as the woman who sold her daughter for money. I should feel satisfaction. I don't. I just feel tired. December arrives with the first snow. Toby is 5 weeks old now, gaining weight beautifully. 6 pounds, 2 ounces. Still small, but growing. The court hearing to remove supervised visitation is perfunctory. Patricia testifies that I'm an excellent mother, that supervision is unnecessary. The judge agrees. Ms. Hartford, you have full custody. Mr. Blake's visitation rights are suspended pending trial outcome. Congratulations on your daughter. Outside the courthouse, snow falls softly. Toby is bundled in a snowsuit that makes her look like a tiny marshmallow. I hold her close, breathing in her baby smell. We won, I whisper to her. For now, we won. Christmas comes. Jessa strings lights around her tiny apartment. Ruth sends a gift basket. Victor visits with a teddy bear almost as big as Toby. My phone rings on Christmas morning. Unknown number. I answer. Hello. Claire, it's Garrett. I almost hang up. But something makes me listen. I'm calling to say I'm sorry, he continues. For everything, the gala, the custody fight, all of it. I was wrong. You were more than wrong. You were criminal. I know. My lawyers tell me I'll probably go to prison, 5 to 7 years. If I take a plea, 10 if I don't. Good. I just wanted you to know. Toby, that's a good name. Your father would be proud. You don't get to mention my father. You're right. I don't. But Claire, for what it's worth, I did love you once. Before the money and the business and all of it. In the beginning, I really did love you. I don't believe you. I know. I wouldn't either. He's quiet for a moment. Merry Christmas. He hangs up. I delete his number. The trial begins in February. United States. Garrett Blake. Federal Courthouse in Manhattan. Media circus. I'm the prosecution's star witness. The courtroom is packed. Reporters, spectators, Blake Energy employees watching their former CEO face justice. Garrett sits at the defense table in a navy suit, looking smaller than I remember. Rebecca Marsh calls me to the stand. I swear to tell the truth. The whole truth. Nothing but the truth. Ms. Hartford, please tell the court how you met the defendant. I tell the story again. The charity event in 2007, the whirlwind romance, the proposal, the wedding, the prenup I signed without understanding. Did you know at the time that your mother had funded Mr. Blake's company? No, I had no idea. Did Mr. Blake ever disclose that he was using your family's business connections to build Blake Energy? No, I didn't even know those connections existed until after our marriage ended. Rebecca presents documents. My father's trust papers, Hartfield holding statements, the payments from Blake Energy to my mother's shell company. These payments total $9.6 million over 8 years. Were you aware of them? No. Did you receive any benefit from them? No. Who benefited? My mother and Garrett, the defense attorney, a man named Charles Whitmore from a white shoe firm, stands for cross-examination. He's in his 60s, distinguished, with a voice like aged bourbon. Miss Hartford, isn't it true that you signed a prenuptial agreement explicitly waiving claims to business assets? Yes, but isn't it true that Blake Energy was Mr. Blake's company before you married? Technically, yes. But isn't it true that you only discovered these alleged connections after Mr. Blake asked for a divorce? The timing doesn't change the fraud. Please answer yes or no. You only made these claims after the divorce announcement. Yes, but the fraud existed before I discovered it. Or perhaps, Whitmore says smoothly, there is no fraud. Perhaps there's simply a woman scorned, looking for revenge through the legal system. Rebecca objects. The judge sustains, but the seed is planted. The trial lasts 6 weeks. Witness after witness, financial experts explaining the money trail, Robert Finch testifying about my father's business relationships, Alice Murphy presenting her investigation findings. My mother testifies. She looks older, thinner, worn. She confirms everything: the Hartfield Holdings scheme, the payments, the arranged meeting between Garrett and me. Why did you do it? Rebecca asks. I wanted my daughter to be secure. Garrett seemed like a good match. Successful, ambitious. I thought he'd take care of her. But you also benefited financially. Margaret hesitates. Yes, to the tune of nearly $10 million. Yes. Did you ever intend to tell your daughter the truth? I thought it would hurt her to know. Hurt her or hurt you? Objection. Whitmore calls. Sustained, but the damage is done. The jury sees what Margaret is: a woman who sacrificed her daughter for money. Garrett doesn't testify. His lawyers advise against it. Instead, they present a defense of technicality. Nothing he did was technically illegal. Business relationships aren't fraud. Investment from family members isn't conspiracy. The prenup was valid. It's a weak defense, and everyone knows it. Wow. The jury deliberates for 3 days. I wait in Ruth's office, holding Toby, trying not to think about what happens if they acquit. The call coming on a Thursday afternoon. Verdict reached. We rush to the courthouse. The jury files in. The judge asks if they've reached a verdict. We have, Your Honor. On count 1, Bastille, fraud. How do you find guilty? Count 2, tax evasion. How do you find guilty? Count 3, racketeering. Guilty, guilty, guilty. All 14 counts, guilty on every one. Gary's face crumbles. His lawyers look stunned. In the gallery, reporters are already texting updates. Sentencing is scheduled for 6 weeks later. Outside, reporters swarm. Claire, how do you feel? I look into the cameras. I feel like truth matters. That's all I ever wanted, for truth to matter. Sentencing day. March 15th. Judge Morrison, the federal judge who's presided over the trial, looks at Garrett with something close to disgust. Mr. Blake, you built an empire on lies. You married a woman to steal her inheritance. You conspired with her mother to defraud her of her birthright. You've shown no remorse, no recognition of the harm you've caused. The court sentences you to 10 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years supervised release. You will also pay restitution of $47 million to Mrs. Hartford, representing her share of Hartford Petroleum dividends and damages. Garrett stands, expressionless. They lead him away in handcuffs. It's over. The Hartford Foundation opens on a Tuesday in October. The building is a renovated brownstone in Brooklyn, modest but purposeful. The mission supporting single mothers, funding small businesses, providing legal aid to women escaping financial abuse. I stand at the ribbon-cutting ceremony with Toby on my hip. She's 18 months old now, all curls and curiosity, pointing at everything, babbling words that almost make sense. This foundation isn't about me. I tell the small crowd of reporters and supporters. It's about every woman who's been told she doesn't matter, who's been silenced, erased, manipulated. You matter. Your voice matters, and we're here to help. Applause, Orti. Not the overwhelming media circus of before, but genuine, warm appreciation. Ruth serves on the foundation board. Jessa runs operations. Turns out she's brilliant at nonprofit management. Alice Murphy consults on cases where we suspect financial abuse. Victor covers our work occasionally, but mostly he's moved on to other investigations. Sienna shows up quietly, standing in the back. After the ceremony, she approaches me hesitantly. Claire, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for everything. I look at her. She's changed. Less polished. More real. She's teaching acting at a community college in Portland now. You were used to, I say, just differently. I should have asked more questions. I should have walked away. We all should have done things differently, but we didn't. And here we are. She nods. Your daughter is beautiful. Thank you. I hope you find peace. I'm working on it. She leaves. I don't expect to see her again, and that's okay. After the ceremony, I take Toby to Prospect Park. It's a perfect October day. Leaves turning gold and red. She toddles ahead on sturdy little legs, chasing pigeons, laughing at everything. My phone buzzes. A text from Margaret. I saw the foundation opening. I'm proud of what you've built. Can we talk? I stare at the message for a long time. Toby runs back, holds up a leaf. Mama pretty. Very pretty, baby. I delete my mother's message without responding. Some wounds don't heal with apologies. Some betrayals cut too deep. And that's okay. I don't need her approval. I don't need her in my life. I need peace. That evening, I sit in my new apartment, 1 bedroom in Park Slope, small but ours, paid for with the restitution money. It's not the penthouse, but it's real. It's home. Toby's asleep in her crib, clutching her stuffed elephant. I watch her breathe, counting her tiny heartbeats. On my dresser is a photo of my father, young, smiling, standing in front of an oil rig. Beside it, a new photo, me and Toby at the foundation opening, both of us laughing. I did it, Dad, I whisper. I protected what you built, and I built something new. I think about the woman I was 2 years ago, standing on that stage at the gala, humiliated, pregnant, broken. I'm not her anymore. I'm someone who walked through fire and came out stronger. Not because I wanted revenge, though I won't pretend it didn't feel good, but because I wanted truth, because I refused to be erased. My phone buzzes again. Ruth, sending photos from the foundation opening. There's one of me cutting the ribbon, Toby in my arms, both of us smiling. I save it. Tomorrow, there will be more work, more women to help, more stories to hear, more battles to fight. But tonight, I sit in the quiet apartment, listening to my daughter breathe, and I feel something I haven't felt in 2 years. Peace, real, earned, hard-won peace somewhere across the city, in a federal prison in upstate New York. Garrett Blake sits in a cell. His empire is gone. His reputation is destroyed. His freedom is measured in years still owed to justice. I don't think about him often anymore. But when I do, I don't feel anger. I don't feel satisfaction at his downfall. I feel grateful. Grateful that his betrayal forced me to discover who I really am. Grateful for Toby. Grateful for Ruth and Jessa and Victor and everyone who stood with me when standing alone seemed impossible. Grateful for my father, who loved me enough to protect me even after death. And grateful for myself. For refusing to give up. For fighting when fighting seemed impossible. For believing that truth matters. The morning comes soft and golden. Toby wakes at 6, calling for me. Mama up. I lift her from the crib, kiss her wild bedhead hair. We have our routine now. Cheerios and bananas. Her singing along to Sesame Street, butchering the words, perfect in her imperfection. My phone rings. Ruth. Morning, Claire, got a case for you. Woman in Queens. Husband emptied their accounts and filed for divorce. Says she has no money for lawyers. Sound familiar? Painfully familiar. Want to help her. I look at Toby, dancing to the theme song. Yes, I say, I want to help her. Because this is what I'm building now. Not an empire, not revenge. I'm building a network of women who refuse to be erased. A foundation built on the principle that truth matters, that justice is worth fighting for, that no one should face their worst moment alone. That afternoon, I meet Andrea Miller, the woman from Queens. She's 34, pregnant with twins, and her husband just announced he's leaving her. The story is sickeningly familiar. I don't have any money, Andrea says, crying. He took everything. You don't need money. I tell her, that's what we're here for. She tells her story. I listen. Ruth takes notes. By the end, we have a plan. We're going to help you, I say. You are not going to go through this alone. Why? Andrea asks. Why would you help me? Because 2 years ago, I was you, pregnant, broke, humiliated, and alone. People helped me. Now I help others. That's how this works. Andrea cries harder, but different tears now. Relief tears. Hope tears. One evening in July, I see him, Garrett, sitting on a bench in Prospect Park, wearing jeans and a plain t-shirt. He's supposed to be in federal prison for 8 more years. Claire, but he says when he sees me, I got out early. Good behavior. Sentence reduced to house arrest. That's not justice. No, he agrees. It's not. We stand in awkward silence. I'm not here to cause trouble, Garrett says. I just wanted to apologize. Really apologize. I destroyed your life. I used you. I married you for money and connections. And I forgot you were a person. You didn't forget. You never cared. You're right. He stands to leave, then turns back. Your daughter. How is she? You don't get to ask about her. I know. I hope she's happy. We are. No thanks to you. He walks away. I watch him disappear into the evening crowd. I feel nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, no closure, just nothing. And somehow that's the most powerful feeling of all. He's irrelevant now. His opinions don't matter. His presence doesn't affect me. I go home to my daughter, to my small apartment, to my ordinary, beautiful life. And I don't think about Garrett Blake again. That night, I tuck Toby into bed, kiss her forehead, turn on her nightlight that projects stars on the ceiling. Mama, she says as I'm leaving. Yes, baby. Love you infinity. Love you infinity plus one, she giggles. That's not possible. With you, anything's possible. I close her door and sit on my bed, on my dresser. The photo of my father is joined by dozens of others. Toby at the beach, Toby's first day of school, Toby and me at the foundation celebration. A life built from wreckage. A story that started with humiliation and ended with hope. I think about the woman I was 2 years ago, standing on that stage, pregnant and blindsided, certain her life was over. If I could talk to her now, I'd say, you're stronger than you know. The pain won't last forever. You'll survive. You'll build something beautiful from the ashes. Your daughter will be extraordinary. Your work will matter. Your life will have meaning. You were never the victim in your own story. You were always the hero. You just didn't know it yet. Outside my window, the city glows. 8 million people. 8 million stories. Mine is just one thread, but it's woven strong, bright, and true. And that's enough. That's everything.